Story 1. I have this little spot where I wait to pick up customers. It is a nice spot where I'm not too far away from the city centre and it's quiet. I can chill out and listen to music while I wait for Uber jobs, and I do not have to pay for parking. On the night of this story, a woman holding a baby approached my car. She knocked on my window and she asked me if I was a taxi service, which I found a bit odd, because there is nothing about my car that gives any indication that I'm a taxi. She told me that she was going to a neighbourhood located far into the countryside. It was an area located high up into the hills. It was definitely a strange place for someone to want to go, but people did live there, so whatever, I thought. We agreed on $50, and her and her baby got in the back of my car. I usually did not accept jobs outside of Uber, but for $50 cash in hand, I couldn't really say no. And it was a woman and a baby. I didn't want them to be out late at night, looking for a taxi. I began driving away. The woman sat in the middle back seat, which I thought was a bit strange. Most people usually pick a side to sit on. She was cradling her baby in her arms, very tightly, covering the baby as much as she could. I tried to strike up a conversation with this lady. She didn't really seem interested in talking. This happens sometimes. Some people are just not talkers and want some peace. After being about 15 minutes, give or take, into our journey, I realized something. Something very, very strange. Her baby had not made a single noise the entire journey. Not a peep. Not only that, it had not moved or shown any sign of, life. I kept checking my mirror. Every time I looked at this woman, she was looking right back at me. She was sweating. I could tell that she was extremely nervous. She would cover up and hold her baby closer and tighter each time. I drove around heavy bends, but nothing. No sign of life from the baby. Moments after this, I caught a glimpse of the baby in the mirror, and I was kind of shocked and weirded out by what I saw. This was not a real baby. It was a plastic dummy. A child's toy. Definitely not a real child. A lot of questions came flowing through my mind. Why? How? And what the fuck? "How is your baby doing?" I asked. "Fine," she replied. "She is a deep sleeper." This was all very creepy now. Late at night, in the middle of the woods, with a woman who is sweating with nerves, holding a plastic baby, pretending it was a real child. We arrived at the address. I was about to tell her we had arrived, when she pointed up at an off-road path. "I live up there," she said. She didn't look up at me, and was texting on her phone. I was quite surprised, as I could not really imagine any houses up there. It was pretty much a slightly wider than normal footpath. I did as instructed, and I began driving up the off-road track. I could see this woman was even more nervous. She was even shaking a little bit. "Are you sure you live down here?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Please just drive, and don't look at me." Her saying that was an even bigger sign that something was way off track here. I really wanted to stop right then and there and tell her to walk, but that would not be very gentlemanly of me now, would it? As we got further down the path, I could feel her nervous energy build more and more. And out of nowhere, she screamed, my baby, it's going to be sick. Please open the door." I did. And as I did, the woman got out and began running into the woods. I thought it was going to be just a fleeing customer, but oh no, it was much worse than that. Out of the woods I could see a shadowy figure coming out from behind the trees. A man wearing all black and a dark mask of some sort, holding a gun in his hand. I heard him shout something, but I could not really make out what he said. As soon as I saw him, I put my foot to the floor. The back passenger door was still swinging open. I heard the gun fire a few times into the air, but I just kept driving. I didn't even look back. Fortunately for me, the off-road track had an exit on the other side. Otherwise I would have had to drive past again. I got back to town. A bullet had gone into the passenger seat, and there was a bullet mark on the bonnet. I am very lucky to be alive. Story 2. This story is told from the perspective of a female. I arrived at my local bus station. I was home for the weekend from college, and I had 3 bags with me. My mum did my washing every time I would go home, so I always took quite a few bags with me each time I would go home and visit. I had arranged for an Uber pickup from the bus station. It only took around 10 minutes for the Uber to arrive. The Uber driver got out of his car to greet me. He seemed really friendly, but his facial expression changed when he looked down at my bags. "What are those?" he asked. "My suitcases," I told him. He said, "Yes, but there is only one of you, and you have 3 bags. I told him yes, and what was the difference? He seemed to be really bothered by this, and actually genuinely angry. He told me the luggage wouldn't all fit into the trunk, and he would have to put the luggage into the back seats, which he didn't like doing. He told me not to touch anything, and that he would put the luggage in, because he didn't want me to scratch his seats. He was literally furious with me. I've honestly never seen someone so angry in my life. He was putting in my luggage, and swearing, and muttering things under his breath. When I got in the car, I sat in the back. He continued saying things under his breath at me. He was saying things like, "Fucking scratch my seats," "3 pieces of luggage, spoilt bitch." And he wouldn't shut up. He just kept going on and on for no reason at all. After being on the road for only a few minutes, he said something that really haunted me. He had really crossed the line this time. He said, "You scratch my seats, I should be allowed to scratch you." I told him to stop the car and let me out, and he completely lost his shit. He pulled over the car and then said, "Yeah, get out," and he took all my luggage and threw it onto the curb. I told him he was crazy, and he flinched as though he was going to punch me, but he didn't. He then got in his car and drove off. I complained to Uber, and they're still investigating what happened. It was a very strange day, and I always ask now if I have extra luggage, just in case one of the drivers freaks out on me again. Story 3. Before I start this story, and make it look like I'm ungrateful for my small Uber business, I want to make it clear that I rarely have any issues. When I was laid off from work 2 years ago, I didn't think I would find anything to be able to put food on the table or clothes on my kids' backs. Uber has helped me with that, and I'm very grateful to its platform. The majority of the time, the app works like clockwork. And sure, sometimes you may have to deal with some difficult people, but isn't that the same with anything? On the night of this story, it had been a slow night. Not much was really happening. When the notification came through from Uber, I jumped on it. There is nothing worse than being out and about, wasting time, and not earning anything. The job was not such a large distance, but due to the quiet night, I didn't really care. I picked up the customer. It was a man, a smartly dressed guy, in an expensive suit. He had a briefcase with him. He looked like sort of the Wall Street businessman type. Got into the back of the car, but didn't say anything at all to me. No hello, nothing. Just straight into the back seat. I began driving to where the guy wanted to go, and after 5 minutes, I received a notification saying that he'd changed the destination address. He had completely changed where he was going. He was now heading out of town, through the woods. I turned around and asked him if he had meant to change direction, but he just ignored me. He just stared blankly back at me. I asked him again, but again, he just ignored me completely. He looked through me, like I was not even there. During the drive out, I kept looking into my rearview mirror. The customer was also looking at me, in my rearview mirror, and our eyes would meet each time. It was very uncomfortable. He just had this blank, emotionless stare. By this point, we'd driven out of town. We were well into woodland. I was beginning to get really creeped out. I tried once again to strike up a bit of a conversation, but he just ignored me and stared blankly back into my rearview mirror. About 10 minutes after this, I looked back into my rearview mirror. This time, he was not staring back at me. He was playing with something in his lap. I couldn't really make it out at first. I couldn't see what it was. But then a flicker of street light shone onto it. He had a gun on his lap. He had it in sort of a belt holster. He was playing around with it. I tried my best not to panic, but there was not much else I could really do. We were just entering woodland at this point, when the guy yells, "Stop." I tell him that we're still far away, and he ignores me again, like I don't exist. "Pull over by this bridge," he says. Part of me wants to say no way, but I just wanted to do as I was told, and not raise any issue. I pulled over by an old shut-down bridge, to the left of the trail. He then tells me that he needs to get out before he pays me, as he cannot reach his wallet sat down. I tell him no problem, and I let him out. He walks up to my window and starts reaching towards where his gun is. I'm about to floor it out of there. I honestly thought this was going to be it. When I looked back, he had pulled out his wallet. He handed me little over $300. I told him it was way too much, and he said, "Take it. You never know when your last moment alive will be." Before walking off down the trail, I turned my car into the old bridge to turn around. And when I turned my car around, there was no sign of this man. He was gone. He had simply vanished into the woods. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and a comment, as it will really help my channel grow, and I also very much enjoy reading your comments and feedback. I cannot thank you enough, and please subscribe if you are new for more real-life horror.